everyone, welcome to another episode of Vitamob TV. It's your host Dan Brown here, and I'm super happy to have you with us today because we had a very special guest on the show. His name is Jason Seib, and he just released a new book on Amazon called The Paleo Coach. So he came on the show and revealed to us the years and years of research that went into that book and what he found out after all those years of research that really changed the lives of himself and his clients in terms of nutrition and workout efficiency. So keeping a very minimalistic workout and nutrition schedule that you could stay consistent with, but at the same time will allow you to achieve your health goals and your fitness goals. So Jason came on the show today. It was a super awesome interview. Grab a pen and paper, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. It's your host Dan Brown, and I'm here with a very special guest who goes by the name of Jason Seib. He runs a fitness and health podcast and has just released a brand new book. So for that reason, I asked him to come onto the show today, and luckily he obliged. So how you doing today, Jason?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
No worries. I'm looking forward to getting as many secrets out of you as possible today on the show.
Awesome.
So if you don't mind, to get the ball rolling and kick things off here, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you got started into running a gym and being so consumed with fitness day to day?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in and around fitness, I guess. I started working out myself when I was about 18 years old, and I'm now 39. So doing it myself for a long time, and I was never really the gym rat type. I immediately took a lot of interest in the science behind fitness and nutrition, and just started gathering data over the years. And I think that eventually you study enough, and all roads lead to paleo nutrition and responsible, kind of evolutionary perspective fitness, which is what I do now. And so I kind of started training clients, not as my primary source of income or anything, but just kind of on the side relatively early on. It's been quite a while now. And then, just helping people out here and there. And then decided to make it my primary source of income and actually follow my passions. I guess it's been like 7 or 8 years ago now, and my gym has been open 5 years, just over 5 years. It was 5 years in February 1st. So, we've been doing this quite a while, and from there it led to blogging, and now I do a seminar around the country with Sarah Fragoso from Everyday Paleo and the Everyday Paleo cookbooks, and have our podcast is Paleo Lifestyle and Fitness Podcast, and then we opened Everyday Paleo Lifestyle and Fitness, which is our online training community, and now there's a book, and so things just kind of went crazy, and now there's a whole lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got a lot of stuff going, some really good momentum. I'm just wondering, you just mentioned to me before the call, we were chatting, and you mentioned your new book, Paleo Coach book. So Can you just briefly, what's it all about, and, how can our listeners use this information to succeed with their fitness goals at a much higher level?
Okay. Well, the Paleo Coach is, the paleo nutrition, or the paleo diet, which I hate to say it that way, but basically what it is the concept of, human beings have a diet in the same way that every other animal on the face of the planet has a diet. So when we think of, in modern terms, when we think of the word diet, we think of a departure from one way of eating to another way of eating in order to elicit some sort of response or meet some sort of goal. So I'm going to go on a diet or do a diet to get down a couple pant size, or to get into a specific shape for a specific event, like women trying to get into a wedding dress specifically for a wedding. And when we use that term for diet, we have to admit that we're the only creatures on the face of the planet that consume nutrition that use that word diet that way. We're the only ones that could ever be said to be using the word diet as a verb, or dieting, or doing a diet. So all animals all have a diet. Example I use in my book is that there's no lowland gorilla anywhere doing a special lowland gorilla weight loss diet so she can get into a lowland gorilla dress for her lowland gorilla high school reunion. So paleo is just simply asking the question, what is the human diet? Like, according to the last 2.6 million years of human evolution and all the natural selective forces that made us stronger as opposed to making us go extinct. And so why is that important? Well, when we look at the anthropological record and we look at all the indigenous hunter-gatherers living today and we look at all of the animal kingdom, we don't see any of what is known as Western disease, which is heart attack, stroke, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, cataracts, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. All of these diseases, all these non-infectious diseases, don't really exist to any real statistical significance anywhere outside of Western humans. So we're trying to figure out why, and the biggest component in all of this is this departure from this way of eating that made us stronger to something that would allow us to proliferate our species and have 7 billion people on the planet, but be very bad for the individual. And namely, the force behind that was this agricultural revolution where we started eating things like grains and legumes and dairy that were, these novel foods that are really new considering they've only been around about the last 10,000 years as opposed to the last 2.6 million. So, and then exercise, we kind of view through the same kind of standpoint. We don't do a lot of things like cardio in nature. If you could outrun me for a 5K in nature or 10K or even worse, a marathon, you wouldn't have caught any more food or escaped any more predators. So are we selectively adapted to be able to do these things? So I don't know if you listened to our most recent podcast with Jim Laird. We were all in basically agreement that how we treat fat loss clients and as well as health clients, and virtually any client that comes in the door, regardless of the goal, is the first thing we do is get them lifting heavy things and walking a lot, and we try to eliminate things that don't make sense to the body. So the other major component in the book is trying to get a general understanding for people of the psychological effects behind this and how a focus on aesthetic goals and being constantly driven to drive a number down on the scale is, first off, mostly ridiculous, but second off, usually a path to failure. So when we see people come in that have very intrinsic goals, they say things like, my body deserves better than what I've been giving it, and I just want to feel better and show me how to get healthy. Those people get fit and therefore attractive, great bodies in the blink of an eye. And the people that come in and sit down in front of us and we ask them what they want to do and they're pointing at parts of their body and pinching things and they've got desperation in their eyes, those people tend to struggle and oftentimes fail, and they're usually already long into a path of yo-yo dieting where they've lost and regained the same 10 or 20 pounds over and over again until they're metabolically broken. We see a lot of starvation diets, a lot of ridiculous amounts of cardio and running where they just continuously add more mileage or more minutes on the cardio machine in an attempt to get, the same results they got for the first couple of weeks that they started doing that stuff before it started tearing their bodies down. So a lot of perspective shift, a lot of me trying to get you an epiphany on every page. Hope that answers your question because there's a heck of a lot more I can say about it.
Right. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm just wondering, though, is paleo or a paleo diet, like you mentioned earlier, I don't want to say that too many times, but is that only used mostly for weight loss, or can that be used as well just for even bulking up and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely anything. It's just human nutrition. It's not basically any situation in which you give your body what it expects and it needs to get healthy. You can improve any goal that way. I mean, if you want to lean out, obviously that usually happens pretty naturally for the most part when, to a certain degree anyway, when you go from a standard American diet with all these Neolithic foods that your body doesn't really understand, things like grains that are damaging the microvilli or the brush border in your intestines and keeping systemic inflammation up and keeping your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio off, and all of these various components that I explain in detail in the book. When those things are out of balance, it gets really hard to stay lean and healthy. being overweight in and of itself isn't something we tend to aim directly at fixing, because it's usually just an indication that you're not healthy. It's one sign of that, along with a lack of energy and bad sleep patterns and things with skin and hair and headaches and digestion and all these other facets that we're trying to fix all in one whack by trying to give the body what it needs. So people tend to lean out anyway. But for, gaining muscle mass and performance type goals, that kind of stuff usually just on top of being really healthy and having a body that's primed to do that, it comes down to, earning your carbohydrates. And, if you work out really hard, you've got probably a bit more of a need for starchier carbohydrates, where you can use that glucose and then store some as glycogen to be really prepared for your next workout. But also caloric intake, sometimes it's just necessary to really eat for those kinds of goals, whereas you wouldn't necessarily be trying to cram down extra calories if your primary goal is to get as lean as possible. So yeah, it all starts there, but of course there's ways to tweak the knobs and dials for various goals, but there's never going to be a situation, for my money and for all the science that I've amassed over the years, where eating outside of human food would ever make sense. So like a good example I heard a while back was, if you were to take a tiger out of the jungle, put him in a cage and feed him 40% of its natural diet, would you expect that particular tiger to become a example of peak health in its species? And I don't think anybody would say that. And I don't think anybody would ever think, oh yeah, that's going to be an amazingly healthy, super awesome example of a tiger. But that's exactly what humans do. A lot of us, if we're lucky, are eating 40% of what our body expects. So especially in the inner cities, people have a really hard time getting, fresh meat and vegetables. You're talking about situations in which people, probably the vast majority of their diet is stuff that their body has no idea what to do with. So no matter what your goal, it makes the utmost sense to first get really, really healthy.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And just touching on that, so what would you say are some of the common misconceptions that, mainstream health and fitness in the media, what are the common misconceptions that they lead us to believe?
The calories in, calories out theory is probably the biggest one when it comes to nutrition, especially with fat loss, that, calories in needs to equal calories out. You need greater caloric expenditure if you're going to lose fat. And that's a way, way, way oversimplified concept. It's just, I have clients, the anecdotal cases, but I'm not recommending this for anybody, but I have one particular client, Deb Hunter. She eats about 3,500 calories a day, and she's a size 4 at 53 years old with a 265-pound deadlift, and she can do 8 pull-ups without touching the ground. She's examples on Everyday Paleo and also in my book. By the way, we have pictures of Deb in the book also, and on Everyday Paleo, of her at a size 6 and a size 12, both at 155 pounds in both pictures. So that's our example where we tell you to throw out the scale. If you want to check that out on Everyday Paleo, the post is called Attention Scale Addicts Part 2, and the pictures are side by side, and there's a dramatic difference in them, but in both pictures she's exactly 155 pounds, which is how we tell people, you can go ahead and get off your scale now. Thinking that you have an ideal weight is a ridiculous concept. It'd really be a great idea if your listeners check that out. But the caloric intake thing is just, it's a badly broken misconception. When you restrict calories, your body will downregulate your energy output. It responds, it adapts. Just like when you increase cardio, which is the other side of what they usually tell you need to do, your body downregulates your metabolism to adapt to what it believes is your new high speed during your workouts, and eventually that ends up in thyroid damage. So we see women that are, getting bad thyroid tests, and they've been doing cardio for years. So these unnatural situations are tricks and gimmicks. If I asked you, once you understand that the way to lose fat and to look awesome, what we call, healthy by choice, hot by accident, the way to get to that is to get really, really healthy. Then if I asked you, what would you do today to get really, really healthy, therefore to look great, you're never going to say, well, I think maybe the first thing I should start doing is starving myself. That's just never going to be the answer anybody would give you. Even if they would be a person who would starve themselves to lose weight, when you pose the question as, what would you do beginning today to get as healthy as you possibly can? And even if they're wrong, they might tell you, go on a vegetarian diet or something ridiculous like that, but they're still going to make a play for something that they believe would improve health, not some trick to try to make them skinnier. And once you start understanding these concepts, you start understanding that the opposite of fat is not skinny. Just like the opposite of skinny is hot, the opposite of fat is hot, and that means healthy. So these misnomers that come out of the media are all things that don't make sense once we look at them from an evolutionary biology perspective. An example of that being, things like red meat causes heart disease. Eating red meat causes heart disease. Well, okay, then we need to look everywhere in the anthropological record where we see a lot of meat being eaten, red meat, especially saturated fat, and we need to be able to find heart disease in all of those locations. And when we can't, then we need to come back and do studies with tighter controls that control for more than just did you or did you not eat red meat, and then see what happens. And when we do this and we follow these things through, we start finding that all of these concepts are basically ridiculous, and it's really easy to find data out there if you look. So there's tons of those. Your question is a really broad question. Where do you think the media is in the mainstream is misleading us the most? But I think the two biggest ones are caloric restriction and cardio.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting how, you go dive right into the practical application and, the psychology behind why you put together this book, because you don't normally hear that kind of stuff in the mainstream. So I find it really interesting. And it actually has me wondering, like, what do your typical workouts look like? Like, I know we've been talking about nutrition and how big of a component that is to, your health goals, but what do your typical workouts look like so that you don't hit training plateaus?
Well, in my gym, we train with a strength bias. So our goal, first and foremost, is to get everybody really strong. So I think right now around 70% of the women in my gym deadlift over 200 pounds. And the average size for those women that are deadlifting that, I believe, is probably around a 4 to a 6. So we're not creating big women, but we're creating very strong women. And the men, obviously the men aren't worried about bulking up in most cases, but our goal is always in both places to make, or both genders, to make people as strong as we can. And then we, try to convince people that what they need to be doing outside the gym. Most of them are working out with us just 3 days a week. Matter of fact, you have to be with me for quite a while and really prove yourself to me before I'll let you come to my gym more than 3 days a week, because more is not usually the thing that you're missing. If you're not hitting your goals, more exercise is usually, or more hours spent exercising is not usually what you're missing. So we have people working out about 3 days a week with this strength bias, try to impress upon them that they need to be walking as much as they can outside of the gym, but not doing anything like cardio, just long, slow movement. We don't want them huffing and puffing. And then, so in the gym we have regular lift rotations that are designed to increase strength through periodization of 6 of our big lifts that we use on a regular basis. And then we also have a big mobility component. Each day there's always 4 mobility assignments that are related to the lifting that we did. And in between the mobility and the lifting, there is our high intensity interval training, which we always keep really short. It's the part where you do huff and puff, and we try to keep that to under 15 minutes and the intensity really high, oftentimes under 10 minutes. But my clients all know that for us it's basically an afterthought, that the vast majority of what people come in trying to accomplish can be done with lifting and a lot of walking and a perfect diet.
Right. So you got your warm-up, right? Then they come in, you do some strength, and then you do a little circuit after for cardio and a little burnout type deal?
Yeah, similar to circuit. Sometimes it's just sprint intervals. Sometimes it's high-intensity interval training that looks something like CrossFit, but we'd like to say oftentimes quite a bit more responsible. So a short duration, not keep the intensity high, but not take it out so long that you're creating a lot of cortisol and oxidative stress. And then at the end of all that, we do about 10 minutes maybe of mobility work where we're finishing up by loosening up the muscles that we just worked.
Awesome. So how long do your workouts normally run?
An hour or less. Our clients are out of there between 45 minutes and an hour.
Cool. So you guys are only doing about 3 hours of working out a week plus, walking and things like that.
Yeah, as much walking as you can fit in. I've always said if a client came to me and said that they were walking 30 miles a week, I'd cheer for them. If they said they were running 30 miles a week, I'd probably fire them. Depending on their goals, I can't get you lean and healthy if you're running 30 miles a week. So.
Gotcha. So tons of value on the call today, Jason. I really appreciate you hopping on with us. And really quick before you go, I just want to know, can you give us, a description of some of the benefits that people could get out of your Paleo Coach book? Because I'm going to have a link below to head over and grab the book for all of our listeners.
Cool.
And also I'll grab the link from you for that post that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But can you just give us some of the benefits that our listeners can take away from your book?
Yeah, I think the Paleo Coach is what has kind of been missing from, in my opinion, what's been missing not only from the diet community and all the diet books out there, but also even the paleo community to a greater degree, where I really got into the sections are think, eat, and move. So the first thing we address is your head, and make sure that you understand what your goals even are and how you're going to get there, and that you understand, the need for, intrinsic motivations and all that kind of stuff, and then exactly what to eat, and then exactly how to move. And I don't give specific workouts. It's more like exercise theory, but I help people find good trainers and all that kind of stuff. But we needed to take, and most people need to take a big step back and get a 30,000-foot view of this whole equation and eliminate the emotion and the desperation and get down to business on what actually makes sense to your body and from a scientific perspective without overwhelming people with science. So that was my goal for the book. There's right now, at the time that we're recording this, I think there's 160 reviews on Amazon, and 155 of them are 5-star reviews, and all of those people are saying the same thing. They're saying, this is the book that made it all make sense for me.
Awesome. Well, for all of our listeners, go ahead and hit that link below the video now. Check out Jason's new book. You heard it straight from his mouth, over 155 positive 5-star reviews. So, Jason, before you run off, any last words for our listeners?
No, check out the podcast, and that's the Paleo Lifestyle and Fitness Podcast. It's on iTunes, and it's also posted on my Facebook each week, and on Twitter. You can catch me on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for Jason Seib, S-E-I-B. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason. Have a good day, buddy.
All right, you too. Take care.